Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for October 26, 2011 to order. And would you all rise for the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all. Ms. McGill, would you call roll, please?
Chair Wiscombe.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
K-Spear. Jacobson. Longstreet. Here. Trentikoski.
Here.
Intern Yee is not present. Ferrara is not present, and Jacobson is not present.
Thank you, Ms. McGill. Hey, Ms. Rapp, do we have any changes to the agenda or written communications?
No, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Is anyone here for public comment on items that aren't on the agenda, or not on the agenda? Okay, we will pass public comment then, and we will move on to community service recognition. This is agenda item number 1. Ms. Rapp, are you starting this? Okay.
Actually, the presentations will be made, both presentations this evening will be made by Jason Bryan, our Senior Recreation Supervisor. Jason?
Welcome, Mr. Bryan. Nice to see your shining face. Oh, there.
Thank you very much, Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners. We're here for 2 separate presentations. One has a couple different facets here. The Parks and Recreation Department resurrected a great event for the 90-plus population here in town. We've had many 90-plus parties that have been offered under our umbrella. A few years ago, it got a little bit too big for us, and it was very expensive. We had most of the fundraising taken care of, but it was still a lot of an event to manage. So this last year, this past year, we were approached by Sam Solario, who is in the 90-plus ranks, and a couple other 90-plus members who wanted to bring the event back. And we reached out to some individuals to make that possible with the resources that we have available with Parks and Recreation. And there were some organizations that came to the calling, and we're here today to recognize those organizations, specifically 3 of the local Rotary clubs that lived up to the mantra of service over self. The Sunrise Rotary Club, the Rotaract Club, and the Bishop Diego Interact clubs were all instrumental in making this event possible by bringing the manpower to us, helping with some of the logistics, and just making the event possible, because it does require quite a few bodies on the floor to make this happen. And today we have some representatives of the 3 different clubs. Also, McConnell's Fine Ice Cream, represented by our Commissioner Scott Burns, was generous enough to donate the ice cream for the ice cream social. So without further delay, I'd like to invite some of the representatives up that we have here today, starting with the Rotaract representatives that are for our young professional Rotary members.
Welcome. I went to the event. It was absolutely fantastic. I got around and talked to a lot of the 90-plussers, and they were just jazzed. It was just a really cool event, and it couldn't have happened without all your help. So on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department, the Commission would like to thank you very much for your service. Would you like to say something here? Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you're Rotaract?
Yes, I am Rotaract. Thank you. I'm Matthew Chow, the president of the Rotaract Club of Santa Barbara. And I thank you all for this award that you've given our club. And our club is it's a service club of young professionals and students of UCSB and SBCC. And we are part of the Rotary Club. And from the Rotaract Club, we gain to hopefully in the future to become Rotarians.
Next up, we would like to recognize let's see here, sorry, the Bishop Diego Interact Club. Do we have representatives?
I'm Scott Burns, and I'm also helping with the Interact Club, and I had an email early this morning saying that the person who was planning to attend had a tennis practice that came up suddenly, and I said, if you can, bring someone or send someone, and I don't see anybody.
Okay.
So I would say no.
Well, okay, we will make sure that that award is forwarded to them for their support. And then finally, from the Rotarians, the Sunrise Rotary Club.
I've been asked to accept that award.
Fantastic. So Scott will be accepting that award on behalf of the Sunrise Rotarians. Thank you very much.
Come on, can't you move any faster than that? Come on.
This is called multitasking.
You might as well stay down here since, yeah, okay. Thank you so much on behalf. You guys all just did so much work. You were scurrying around out there like crazy when the event was going on, and it was just wonderful. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Why not?
While you're here, wearing another hat, the McConnell's Fine Ice Cream hat, an ice cream social isn't much without ice cream. So there was a generous donation of quite a bit of vanilla ice cream that went over quite well with our crowd, and Scott was instrumental for making that happen. So thank you very much for wearing that other hat and pulling that bit of logistics together for us.
It went really well with the cake, too. So, yeah. So, thanks again.
Thanks.
Another hug. Thank you so much to McConnell's and
So I assume I get 4 minutes of speaking, but you guys have seen me before, and it won't take that long. McConnell's is a great Santa Barbara tradition. It's got new owners, and they're doing very well. And Santa Barbara Sunrise Rotary, if people are interested in joining Rotary, actually just Google Rotary in Santa Barbara, and there's 7 clubs in the southern Santa Barbara South Coast area to join. And I was glad to be able to help. Sam Solario is a good friend of mine, and he did very little arm twisting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott.
On behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department, I want to add my thanks to all the people who helped put on this event. If you ever want to be fully rewarded, attend this event and have the opportunity to talk and interact with people, many of whom, most of whom, have lived in this community for their 90-plus years. So we really thank you for allowing us to honor them in the right way. So we really appreciate all of your contributions. Thank you.
And next up for community service recognition is a long-standing community partner that we've had at the Carrillo Recreation Center. The Santa Barbara Country Dance Society has been using the facility most Sundays for decades now for a fantastic program that attracts all ages, family-friendly, called Contra Dancing. And during the renovation, the facility looks beautiful. We received quite a bit of support, a tremendous amount of support from the redevelopment agency, but RDA funding cannot do everything. They have limitations on what they can fund and what they cannot fund. One of the situations we had is the baby grand piano that we had before the renovation was in a state of disrepair. It was an old player piano. Every time we fixed it, it needed another several $100s worth of repairs, so it was something that we were pouring quite a bit of money into, and was always going to have some issues due to its condition and the conversion from the player piano. The Santa Barbara Country Dance Society is one of the groups that would sometimes use that piano, and they really looked at this beautiful ballroom, this beautiful facility, and they saw that it really needed a piano back to honor the heritage and history of that facility. And without a penny of city dollars, the Country Dance Society stepped up to the plate and funded. And actually, the report that you have is a little inaccurate. We were going over kind of phone calls and referring to the price as $7,000. The purchase price for that piano is a beautiful Baldwin Ellington piano that was just restored for this facility. It's actually $8,000 plus some shipping, plus some accessories. So quite a bit of capital was put into that piano. It is available for Parks and Recreation programs as well. And Chair Wiscombe, you heard it played at the 90 Plus party. That was the first time I heard it played. So it's a great asset to the facility. And we are very appreciative to the Country Dance Society for stepping up and making this a possibility. Here today, representing the Country Dance Society is Simon Kiefer. Simon, would you please come up?
I read the report, and not only was it the monetary contribution, but there was a lot of time involved in finding the right piano. We can't thank you enough for that. I think the dancing at the ballroom is elevated to new heights with that, and we certainly enjoyed the music at the 90 Plus social. And on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department, the Parks and Recreation Commission would like to thank you for the generous contribution you've made. And it will be enjoyed for many years. Thank you. Would you like to?
Oh, I would. How did you know? Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of this fine commission. My name is Simon Kiefer, and I'm a board member of the Santa Barbara Country Dance Society. And I would just like to say we were so very pleased to be able to make this contribution. And now I don't have the exact dates, but I believe we have a relationship that goes back 40 years. And I don't know what the traditional gift is for 40 years. I don't think it's pianos. It might be silver, but we couldn't think of a more appropriate gift to acknowledge this relationship.
That's very nice.
It is such a privilege that we realize on a weekly basis in dancing in that ballroom, which we do weekly. And weekly, people come up to me. It's like, what a beautiful facility. I've danced all over the country, and we attract dancers from all over the country. And the overwhelming consensus is that this is one of the best dance venues in the country. Now, this conclusion was reached before the renovations, so it's only gotten better. And we so appreciate the city's acknowledgement and recognition of this valuable community resource, and we appreciate the contribution that the redevelopment agency made for the recent renovation, and we so appreciate the careful and sensitive stewardship that Parks and Rec and this commission has done over the years. I'll leave you with just a little, I've got a little fact sheet on the piano just for your information. I'll leave that here with you, but it was built in 1942. It had come in and out of the Erickson family in Hermosa Beach, and it was completely rebuilt in 2010, 2011 by David Erickson. He completely took the piano apart, replaced pieces, and then rebuilt it. And so it's a stunning instrument. So we're very pleased.
Thank you,
Thank-
Simon, for everything you do within the
Yeah.
city as well as your volunteer activities. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bibi.
Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes community service recognition. Mr. Bryan, thank you very much for the reports. We appreciate it, and for all you do at the Carrillo Rec Center. We appreciate that also. Couldn't happen without you. Okay. We are moving on to the Youth Council report, and Intern Yee is not here, and we have the pleasure of having Christina Rodriguez give us the report. Welcome, Ms. Rodriguez.
Welcome. Like you said, hello, my name is Christina Rodriguez, and I am this year's Youth Council historian, and I will be filling in for Michael Yee. We have had a very busy month with all these different activities, all these different Youth Council members representing them, and the first one is our Candidates Forum. It was very successful. We had a room of over about 160 students and parents and different people representing Santa Barbara at the Davis Center, and we asked all 10 representatives who all representatives attended, we asked them questions regarding youth and youth issues, all asked by teens that we collected. And we had free food, and the whole forum was filled by Channel 21, and it's currently airing now if you didn't go. We also saw Miss Rapp there, and we'd also like to thank FLA and PAL for their support. Personally, I think it was one of the best ones that I've seen, and the candidates also came up and were very polite, very thankful, and they also said that it was one of their favorites that they got to attend. Our second event that recently went on was Lights On October 20th. We supported this at Adams Elementary School to encourage and support after-school programs. The youth activity staff did a good job promoting this event, and our youth council member Isha was attending. Also going on right now is Red Ribbon Week, and it's tomorrow is Wear Your Red Day, and we encourage all of you to wear red in support of the promotion to create awareness concerning the risks of alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use. And we want to support a healthy, productive, and drug-free lifestyle, a drug-free Halloween this weekend. All local high schools are participating in activities like where you pledge for and you get a red wristband saying you will be drug free, and we have buttons for you guys. So let me go. Would you like to pass them out? Our next event is the Fall Festival, and like last year, Youth Council will be supporting it. And the event is also being supported by the Neighborhood Advisory Council and will be tomorrow, the 27th, held at the Children's Park at Wentworth and Rancheria. It has fun games for children, smaller children, and lots of information, and we'll be helping set up and make sure that the event goes smoothly. And last but not least, our next Youth Council meeting will be on Monday, November 7th at the Davis Center, and as usual, we encourage you all to attend. So thank you very much, and that's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rodriguez, for the informative report. I think it's great.
Any questions? Any questions? No?
I was going to ask, yes.
It's okay, you said it.
Oh.
It's a great report.
You
have a great presence.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
I
you,
really
you
appreciate
did a great job. You really did. So, and Isha worked very hard at the Lights On After School program.
We're really excited that she's one of our new council members, and we really appreciate how involved and how hard she's working to be a new council member and get her voice heard. And you know, she's making agenda meeting like just so much better, and we're really excited.
Yeah, she's jumped in with both feet. It's great to see.
So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on to Commissioner Committee assignment reports. Mr. Casebeer, do you have anything?
Yes, last Thursday, I attended the Cabrillo Bathhouse Business Plan Focus Group. It was held to review the possibilities of improving and making changes to the bathhouse. I also believe Mr. Burns attended a same idea, different meeting. So, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Trenikoski, you have something?
It's just a quick update on what's going on with the Golf Advisory Council.
Okay.
The report this week, or last week, indicated that revenues are down still this year, as well as rounds. So that continues to be a concern that we're going to proactively address. We have a new person appointed as tournament director at the golf course to go out and see if we can bring new tournaments or tournaments back to the golf course, which now that the golf course is back in shape, hopefully will be a good thing to do. As far as marketing, we did a survey in the News Hawk and we're in the process of tabulating the results of that survey to see where we can do more specific communication and what people feel could be benefits to the golf course. We also are putting together some new programs to attract new golfers to the sport and enable people that have never golfed before to have an easy entry into it and sample it and see if they like it. So we're in the process of doing that. We're looking at some junior programs and looking at doing some social media. That's it.
Great. Thank you very much. That was a great report. Mr. Burns, do you have a question?
No, I thought you were looking at me to say.
Oh,
what about-
sure. Go for it.
My report is relatively quick. As Commissioner Casebeer said, I also attended one of the East Beach Cabrillo Arts Center meetings where we're trying to figure out what is the best thing to do with the property there. It's about 85 years old, and it needs a little bit of renovation, and we're trying to figure out how to best utilize the facility. I also attended a Park Foundation, Park and Recreation Commission Foundation, along with Commissioner Spaced? Longstreet. Oh, boy. Oh, yeah, whatever. Anyway, so too much ice cream. So it's things are moving along with the Park Foundation.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Burns. Ms.
Yeah.
Longstreet. Ms.
I-
Old, what's your name down there?
I hung out with Mr. What's-His-Name at the Park Foundation, and also I attended one of the bathhouse meetings and wanted to be involved from the beginning to see how this process will move along. And the one thing that I would like to mention is many of you have read in the paper about the death of Michael Magny, who served on the commission, and I think I'm the only one here who served with him years ago, and I would just like to take a minute to say how much I enjoyed that and acknowledge the contributions he made. We worked on the skateboard park together. He was committed to the community, and my son learned to play roller hockey down at his facility on Haley Street when it first came to town. So he will be missed, and he left us with many great contributions to the community. So.
Thank you very much. Excuse me. I don't have a lot to report. I did attend the regular Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting, which is the first Thursday of the month. The trees on your agenda, we conducted site visits and did reviews, and recommendations before you from staff are here today. Mr. Downey at that meeting also summarized his report on enforcement cases for the committee, and again, we have a similar item on our agenda today, so you'll be hearing that report. And just as a reminder, Mr. Downey also announced the 2 upcoming vacancies on Street Tree Advisory Committee, and I believe one must be a city resident and the second may reside outside the city limits. So if you have anyone that you think might be appropriate for that committee, please contact them and submit their names. I did attend the Lights On After School celebration at Adams School. Kids were having a great time. They had a lot of activities for them to do, and it was really fun. And I would like to just take a minute to commend staff for the great partnerships that they formed. And I did get around. I wasn't there that long because I went to another meeting, but several of them said the partnerships have been great. The Santa Barbara School District truly appreciates the partnership with the Parks Department, and I think it really helps make our programs for the youth successful. I also attended the Cabrillo Bathhouse business plan public meeting, and like Ms. Longstreet, I kind of want to learn about it from the beginning. So we basically learned about the comments and the ideas that came from the focus groups. It was kind of the results of all the focus group meetings that were held. So that's all I have. And Since that concludes that, we will move on. Do we have any commission and staff communications, Ms. Rapp?
Chair Wiscombe, just a couple of things. For the commission, at your last meeting, you had a public comment speaker who talked about beach cleaning, and the commission asked that staff bring back a report on our beach cleaning program. So Chair Wiscombe and I got together and looked at the calendar, and we will be bringing that report to you probably in January, unless there are other larger commission items and it gets bumped to February. So January or February, staff will bring a report to you on that. And also to let you know that staff is working very closely with the new Park Foundation manager, and we are working on the park bus tour that will be attended by the commissioners and the Park Foundation board members. And so it's looking to be a great afternoon. It'll be Sunday, November 6th, from 2 to 5. And we want to encourage you to bring your spouse or a guest and look forward to that. So that's hard to believe, but only a couple of weeks away. And that's all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Rapp. Okay, we're on to the consent calendar. Summary of council actions. Ms. Rapp, did you have something to say?
Chair Wiscombe and Commission, I just wanted to point out for the Commission, some of these things are just so that you have this information for the future. But the city has 2 joint use agreements, particularly the Parks and Recreation Department as part of the city. One with the Santa Barbara School Districts, which you're well aware of, that we use as our vehicle for sponsoring our after-school programs, and we share facilities with the school district. And the other is Santa Barbara City College, and we, by agreement, share facilities with them as well. This agreement is actually to have shared use of vehicles under that joint use agreement. And City College mostly uses our vehicles, so our bus and our vans, to support their athletic program travels, and also a geography trip once a year. And then we use some of their vans during the summer to support our youth summer camp programs, because we have so many activities that we actually don't have enough vans to support the program. So just wanted you to know that's like one of those little things that exists off to the side, but it's an important relationship with us. So I wanted to point that out to you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Rapp. I didn't know about it, the Santa Barbara City College part, until I read this. So that's really good to know. Okay, we are on to approval of minutes. Does anyone have any comments, questions, or a motion? Or
I move approval of the September 28th minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously, and we are moving on now to agenda item number 5, 5A, which is Street Tree Advisory Committee items. 5A is 2007 Edgewater Way, and I'm going to recuse myself from this item and let Mr. Burns take over.
Thank you. I believe, since this is my first time, we're going to have staff presentation, then public comment, and then it'll go to commission. I have 2 public speakers slips. If anyone else is planning to give a presentation, let us know soon. Mr. Downey.
Chair Burns and commissioners, that's a change, so that was difficult. 2007 Edgewater Way, the applicant is requesting to remove these 3 Canary Island pine trees. The concerns were that the trees are overly large for the space, that they drop needles, and that they excuse me, they were lifting the driveway of the adjacent property. The Tree Tree Advisory Committee visited the site. They determined that any root pruning to correct the lifting of the driveway would destabilize the tree closest to the driveway. And they determined the other two trees would benefit from that first tree's removal. Their recommendation is to partially approve the removal of the tree closest to the driveway and deny the other two trees.
Any questions from state commissioners? Okay. I'd like to ask Robert Stenson to come forward, and then it'll be Dennis Thompson.
As mentioned just now, an outline of the report from the Street Advisory Committee, we applied for a permit for 3 Canary Island pines, one which was permitted due to root intrusion, while permits for the other 2 have been denied. Now, all 3 pines are in a narrow patch of land close to residential structures. All 3 pines are oversized for the location. At present, their estimated height is 50 to 60 feet, with a maximum projected height of 80 to 120 feet. The trees, in my opinion, are a potential hazard to people and to property. Potential dangers are illustrated in an LA Time article that came out on October 6th, detailing examples that occurred just over the past 2 months of trees falling on a car, killing a motorist, another damaging 4 parked cars, while another fell damaging a home. Referring to the municipal code now, 15.24.08, or considerations for removal of trees, paragraph B states that the potential size of the tree in relationship to the size of the lot, building site, and the size of the existing building should be taken into account. Municipal Code 15.24.09, or findings for removal of tree, paragraph E states that regard for the safety of persons or property may dictate removal. Denial of these permits to remove the additional 2 pines imposes on the homeowner a significant potential liability, and I'm appealing that denial.
Thank you.
Questions, I'd be happy to respond.
No, thank you. Dennis?
Good afternoon, Commission members. My name is Dennis Thompson, and I live at 2005 El Camino de la Luz, just immediately to the north of this property. And I submitted a letter that I hope you all received with photos. This picture doesn't do the trees justice, because if you saw it in context with the adjacent houses, they tower over my house in particular. I appreciate the value of street trees. Through Santa Barbara Beautiful, my firm has donated dozens of street trees in honor of our clients over the years. But I also believe in the right tree in the right place, as the city's guide to tree planting urges. These pine trees are clearly the wrong trees in the wrong place, all 3 of them. Canary Island pine is not a recommended street tree in the ABR guidelines. It's not on the list of trees that do well in the city's guide to tree planting. The trees are not native, and they grow very fast and very tall. I think they were chosen by the previous owner as a way of punishing me for speaking out at his ABR hearings 20 years ago. He also planted an entire hedge of Italian cypress, which, when the Stensons moved in, they were gracious enough to remove. So I still have these towering 3 gigantic trees, which have succeeded very well in 20 years in darkening most of my backyard, most of my house, all year. I don't get any sun at all in that portion of the yard. Especially in wintertime, starting right now, this is when I'd like to get some sun in my south-facing windows. And that's why the city's guide for tree planting, which I'm now quoting for the 3rd time, also says to plant only deciduous trees on the south side of your home, just for that reason, to let the winter sun in the home. These trees are located, as you know, on a short dead-end street, and they're seen only by the residents of about 10 houses. This isn't State Street. It's not Cabrillo Boulevard. It's not Milpas. The public value of the trees is minimal, but I think that the damage done to my property is considerable. I'd appreciate it if you would allow the Stensons to remove the trees and replace them with appropriate landscaping. Thanks.
I'm going to take it back to commission. Does anyone have a comment?
Yes, I went out and visited the site yesterday, and I spoke with both the applicant and one of their neighbors. So I'd just like to disclose that I did have those conversations. You know, we hate to lose a tree. But my concern, as I went back then and thought about it and read the report and the information we have, is one of the things that the STAC report says is that the other two trees would benefit by the removal of the one tree closest to the driveway. They are already large and oversized for the area, and it concerns me that if they benefit from that removal, they're going to become bigger and less appropriate in the spot. It is a tight, very tight planting area, and I think we would be removing these trees within the next couple of years anyway. So I can't respond to things like litter. I think we are going to see more about solar in the future, but we don't really have kind of the strong guidelines within our removal that we, right now, that hasn't come to us before. But I am concerned about their size for their planting space. And so I have a tendency to remove all three at this point. So that's my...
Chris?
Thank you, Scott. I did go visit the site and saw the trees, and you know, I'd like to preserve trees. And these trees have been there 20, 25 years, something like that. And but there is also this issue of not planting the proper tree in the proper location. And obviously, these trees were not, well, I don't know if they were planted there to spite the neighbor that's influenced by the shade or not, but in fact, they do obstruct sunlight into the neighbor's yard. The property owner is willing to replace these 3 trees with jacarandas, I believe, and which are will not grow to this height, but they still will grow. I would, if in fact we do vote to remove the 3 trees, I would ask that you consult with our city arborist about the type of tree that might be more appropriate, not so high, so that you don't end up back here 10 or 20 years from now in a similar situation. So I am of the mind to agree with Commissioner Longstreet that we should allow these 3 trees to be removed.
I heard the, first of all, I also visited the location and agreed for sure that the one closest to the driveway should come out because it is very crowded there. I'm not sure what the impact would be to leave just 1 tree there because it looks like they're fairly stable. I would like to ask Mr. Daniel, is there any danger of these trees falling?
Chair Burns and Commissioner Trentacoste, when we evaluate a tree for hazards, we have to look at 3 sides of a triangle. The 3 sides of the triangle are, is something close enough to be hit if they fell? The answer to that in this case is yes. The second side of the triangle is the object, the tree, large enough to cause damage to that object? And that answer is yes. However, in order to make a determination that there is a hazard, you must also find that there's a visible defect on these trees that precludes them from standing. We could not observe any visible defects on this tree, so therefore we could not make a determination that these trees are an immediate hazard.
The other comment I had was, if you replace these with jacarandas, it seems like they might even provide more shade. But then again, isn't that the purpose of trees, to provide shade? So those were my comments.
Just one more comment. Behind these pine trees, there's a beautiful, on the other property, I think maybe on Mr. Thompson's property, I believe there's a beautiful tree back there. So that looked to me like it would benefit possibly by these trees removals. I don't think we're going to see a denuding. I guess I always look, when I'm looking at the site, and you try to do a 360 at it and see what else is in the area, so that, because it is serious to remove 3 mature trees. That's a big deal to us. But there was that tree right behind it that I think will kind of take over that space visually. So just add that.
It seems that all of us went and looked at the trees. I went out and I looked and I said, well, I could see that why the first tree was should be removed. And as I was looking, I'm saying, well, the only person that's really going to benefit from this, and at the time I didn't realize we were getting a letter from Mr. Thompson, was the person behind it, because they weren't getting any sun. And so I'm ambivalent on whether we take one tree out or all 3 trees out. And so with that being said, I'm looking for a motion from someone.
I move that we approve the removal of all 3 Canary Island pine trees at 20,007 Edgewater to be replaced with trees determined with the aid of the city arborist.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Wasn't sure that since I was playing chair for a moment, if I had the ability to vote. I was actually going to vote in favor of Ms. Longstreet's motion. So therefore, I think it would be a 3-1, or would it be a 2-1? Somebody wants to give me a direction on that? I'm not here very often. It is a 3-1. So the motion passes on 2007 Edgewater. If anyone has a problem with this motion, I believe they have 2 weeks to go to City Council. If I've got that correct?
10 days.
10 days to go to in City Council, and they can overturn our motion, or they can start the process.
They have 10 days to file an appeal.
I'm glad that we've got this out of the way. I'd like to call our real chairman back in here.
Oh, you did just fine.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Okay. We are moving on to 5B, which is 70 Skyline Circle, and Ms. Rapp, yeah.
Chair Wiscombe and Commission, it is the recommendation of staff that you postpone hearing of this item until after the new year. There is a need for staff to do greater consultation with city staff in the Community Development Department and to do some additional research. This request raises issues that have not come up before in terms of solar energy panels related to removal of trees, and so we need to do some clarification of city ordinances And we just want to be able to come back to the commission with more information before you make a decision.
Great. I think that's an excellent idea. And this is, the applicant has been informed and is fine with this, Mr. Downey?
Chair Wiscombe, I spoke to the applicant this afternoon and apprised him that this was our recommendation, and he was happy to proceed in that manner.
Okay, thank you very much. Does the commission need to vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to postpone?
I so moved.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Downey. It was short and sweet today for you. I know. Okay, we're moving on to agenda item number 6, which is the proposal to formally establish the Santa Barbara Youth Council as a city advisory committee. And I see Ms. Young here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
We will hear a report from Ms. Young, and then I know we have a speaker on the item, so after the report, we'll take public comment.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. The reason why we're here this afternoon is, as you stated, is to hear a proposal and get your recommendation and your approval to move forward to the City Council about formally establishing the Santa Barbara Youth Council. The City of Santa Barbara, like many other cities, have for years utilized youth as a voice in various youth issues. And this is something that other nations and other cities have also done. The National League of Cities on their website lists about 140 formal youth councils or youth boards that are throughout the nation, showing that many adults see youth and using youth voice as a way of not only developing that youth, but also getting a youth input on that. The issue at hand for us here in Santa Barbara is that in reviewing our papers and looking at things, we noticed that the city of Santa Barbara had not formally created a youth council. Just to give you a back history of a little bit of history on the background on this, in 1991, the city council saw a need to have a discussion about youth and youth issues, and so they created a youth task force. And out of that youth task force, some of the recommendations was to give youth a voice. And so as part of that, in 1994, the City Council approved of establishing the United Youth Empowered, which basically was a group of teens that worked as a youth voice. And they did that through various mediums, whether it was creating a magazine or also they used their voice just to talk to different boards and commission. Somehow between 1994 and 1997, Youth Empowered the United Youth Empowered became or started to be identified as the Santa Barbara Youth Council. And so from 1997 on, the Youth Council, which mainly served as an advisory body to teen programs, but also to the Parks and Rec Commission and to the City Council through various mediums, began to be identified as that youth voice throughout the city. As part of that, they were part of many different public policy discussions involving various different youth issues, including the creation and development of Skaters Point and also 1235 Teen Center. So again, as I stated, at issue was, though, they were never formally established as we could find in documents by the City Council. And so in order to preserve and to maintain the intent behind having the United Youth Empowered and the Youth Council, and also to help them to be consistent with other advisory bodies, we are before you today to talk about the subcommittee that the Parks and Rec Commission created. The Parks and Rec Commission created a subcommittee that consisted of members from the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Neighborhood Advisory Council, Youth Council, and city staff. And this committee convened over a period of actually from even youth council members from last year to youth council members to this year. And they met approximately 6 or 7 times. And in their meeting was to discuss the proposal for a purpose, duties, and the format of the youth council. The intent was not to significantly change what the Youth Council has been doing now. So basically their purpose, their duties, and all that are similar to what they are now. But there were some key changes which I'll identify. One of them was the membership. It is recommended that the membership be reduced from 17 to 15 members. Also, to expand the composition to specifically have representation from someone from an alternative community or continuation high school. Then, two, to make sure that at least 8 of those 15 members were residents of the city of Santa Barbara. Another key change was the application process. Currently, members who are appointed to the Youth Council are interviewed by and appointed by members of the Youth Council that currently sit. The recommendation is to have the interview and the appointment be part of the City Council's process for appointed advisory members with recommendation from the Youth Council members. Another key point would be the meetings. Currently, the Youth Council hold 2 regular meetings throughout the month. The recommendation is that they would hold a minimum of 1 and then additional meetings as they saw needed. Also, the term. Currently, when a youth council is appointed, generally they stay on the youth council until either they resign or they're removed, which very seldom happens, or when they graduate from the 12th grade. So the recommendation is that they would serve a 2-year term with the possibility of being reappointed for a second term. With regards to the transitioning of current youth council members, which are 17 to the 15, we didn't identify how that would be, but staff would continue to work with the city clerk's office as well as the city attorney's office to find the best way to transition those 17 members to the 15. It should be noted, though, 5 of the current members are seniors and their positions will automatically stop come June anyway. The Youth Council at their meeting on October 10th reviewed the proposal, even though they have been kept up to date throughout the process, and they did agree to approve the draft proposal as written. So today we're before you to get your approval of the proposal, which included the package, which has the purpose and the duties and all that laid out for you, and to see if you will approve the recommendations, and then we could forward it to City Council.
Thank you very much, Ms. Young. Appreciate it. Does any one of my fellow commissioners have a question?
I do have a question,
Okay.
and I appreciate all the work, and I know that this is hard to get on paper. My one concern is the appointment process, and I don't want to mess with it, but how does this fit with a teen's schedule to do this twice-a-year appointment through council? And will we have a little leeway to bring kids in temporarily before? Because it's so limiting to just, do the twice-a-year thing.
So I'll go first, and that's a good point, and we did also discuss that. So normally how it would probably go, once they were appointed by the city council during one of the terms, it would be very unlikely that youth council would have any vacancies for that second time a year. So, but that second time a year would allow for the fact that, for example, if they're appointed by city council for May, it would automatically fit, as it does now, that that person would begin serving that July. Sometimes mid-year, sometimes youth council members do go off. So them coming and having that opportunity that second time would allow them to fill a vacancy if there happened to be one in that period between July and December. But if there are no vacancies, then they would not need to go back to the city council for that second time.
I just know now you do so much of your recruitment at the beginning of the school year. It's sort of, will that work for you, I guess, is what I want to know.
Thank you for that. Actually, the youth councils are appointed at the end of school year, so they usually do their appointment in May for them to start in July. So that's when they're normal. So that would match up exactly with what the city council schedule is.
Thank you.
And actually, that's one of the changes that has happened over the last few years.
Okay.
So to encourage more effectiveness with the youth council, they do their recruitment and appointments at the end of the school year. And it used to be all done in the fall. And so it works much better. And I did want to just clarify. So once we begin using the City Council Advisory Committee appointment process, we are limited to that. So I just wanted to be clear. So there are no options, although as they can now, youth can attend meetings, become involved with committee work, et cetera, and then at a later point actually be appointed to the Youth Council.
Thank you.
Are you? Yeah. Okay. Mr. Casebeer.
I just wanted to, at first when I heard that the city council was going to be involved in the approval process, I was thinking, well, my goodness, they have more than enough to do already. But in retrospect, I feel that it's a very good thing that our city council has a heightened awareness of the quality of the youth that are willing to serve the youth council, and giving the youth the opportunity to stand in this venue speaking to the leaders of our city. So, and looking it over, I think this is a great proposal. Thank you.
If I might comment on that, Commissioner Casebeer, and that was, it went back and forth, to be honest with you. There was some discussion whether to take away that opportunity for the youth council. But in reviewing it, it was a consensus that, in addition to what you said, it would also be good for the youth to have that appointment by the mayor and city council. Not that it loses credibility, but it is good for them to include on their resumes that they are an official appointed by the mayor and city council. Then, too, it will help them, too, in making sure that there is no bias, that you know that they are there. And I think that by them being able to give a recommendation, they still have a voice in how the makeup is.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a question? Because we're going to take public comment before we actually discuss this. Yes, Mr. Burns?
One question. As it's set up with in the future, it'll be a 2-year term. So the question is, if a ninth grader gets in, or the start of the ninth grade, they get out at their 11th grade after 2 years, have you figured out how to keep them for another year while they'll graduate in 12th grade? Do you see my question?
If I'm not mistaken, I think that we put it, I'm not mistaken, it's from 13 to 19. So therefore, because we took that into consideration, so if they are reappointed in the 11th grade, they still can serve through their 19th year.
Oh, okay. The paperwork here says until graduation from 12th grade.
That's the way that it formally was. I'm not sure what you're looking at, but formally it was until their graduation from 12th grade. But what we're recommending is that would be between the ages of 13 to 19, if I'm not mistaken.
I think either way, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Burns, your question is, somebody is appointed for a 2-year term, and then what if they only have 1 more year in high school? And the answer is, it's no different than what we currently have with all of the different appointees to the various city boards and commissions. And if someone then withdraws from the board or commission, then there's another appointment. One of the things that staff wants to work with the city attorney and the city clerk's office on is whether, in fact, that appointment to finish out that term is just a continuation of that term, or whether, in fact, that person could have make a 2-year appointment. And that's one of the things that we need to work out. It's a detail, and we'll work that out with the city attorney's office and the city clerk's office.
And I think my understanding is that when you graduate from 12th grade, it doesn't matter how old you are, that is the end of your term, but that we had talked at the committee level about you could be in 12th grade and maybe be 19 years old, and so we wanted to make sure that we had both the age limit, the age bracket in there, and also the fact that if you've graduated from 12th grade, then you've got to turn over the reins to someone else. That was my understanding of what came out of it, and I think that's what that says in here. So
we'll make sure that the language, this is not unchanged from what it is currently and how the Youth Council is operated. So it's always been to age 19. The difficulty that we have to just look at is that you know, if somebody has graduated from high school and they are a high school representative, then we have that awkward situation. So we will look at that as well with the city clerk's office and the city attorney and modify language if needed to make sure that we have clarity for those appointments and for city council.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, since that completes the questions, I'm going to open it up for public comment. We have a speaker slip from Yvette Gill, and welcome. She's one of our youth council members, and you're actually the chair this year, are you not? Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. As she said, my name is Yvette Gill, Chair of this year's Santa Barbara Youth Council. And on behalf of the Youth Council, I would just like to say that we do indeed support this resolution. I actually sat on last year's Youth Council as well, serving as the treasurer, and they also supported this change. I also sat on the subcommittee that worked very hard in trying to make sure that we do indeed represent the youth here in our community. And I think that the resolution really does include and provide a good way for students to, if they would like to apply for Youth Council, that they may follow this. And I'd just like to say that we support this, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Burns.
Yvette, just as a question, working with adults and other members over the last few meetings, how did you learn anything from it that you thought you weren't expecting to learn working with people?
Well, it was a new experience for me to work with adults and to collaborate with them, and I found that they definitely communicate a little bit better than us. There are, I think there are a few more strong opinions, just because they're not afraid, as some youth are, to speak out. So that was an interesting point that I learned, but I also learned to communicate well and just to really speak your voice, I guess you could say. Even though you may be a youth speaking in front of adults, it's still important to get your voice heard.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Gill. Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. We have another speaker slip, Christina Rodriguez. Welcome back. Long time no see.
Yes, I am back. I'm Christina Rodriguez, and along with Yvette, I served as a council member last year, and I'd like to comment on the fact of how much we do support this new resolution, and I want to thank all council members, all youth council members and commissioners who were involved in the process. We did have some questions about membership and how we wanted more flexibility on that, and some things about the appointments. They were brought up, but in the end we all agreed that it was, not only was it a better feeling being appointed by the mayor rather than a peer, but it also was just, they do have a better sight on like who would be a good representative for this youth council and who would be representing youth and under them and under the Santa Barbara name. So I'd just like to make those comments, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Chair Wiscombe, and
Yes,
if I could ask, when the commission is making their recommendation, to be more correct, the recommendation should be that the commission approves the proposal to formally establish the Santa Barbara Youth Council as a city advisory committee and recommend the proposal to city council. That's the last part that really should be a part of that recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. K-Spear made the motion. Ms. Longstreet, I think, seconded it first. Is there any other discussion?
Just a few years ago, I was the liaison for Youth Council. Yvette was, I think, a freshman then, possibly. And I really enjoyed my time here watching their discussions. They were very, very good. I'm sure it'll continue to be very good. And so it's always been enjoyable with watching the youth. So,
Yeah, I just, as part of the committee that formulated this proposal or this recommendation, we had a lot of back and forth dialogue, and it was, I think, the end product, although it's not terribly long in words, it really did did take a lot of give and take and idea sharing, I think, and really looking at the views of the members of Youth Council that were on it, Neighborhood Advisory Council, and just from my standpoint, I thought the process was really great. And I'd also like to commend Sarah Hanna, who really worked hard, and Susan Young, who worked very hard. Susan brought to us a lot of ideas from other municipalities for the formulation of these, and it was wonderful, all the work you did on it too. It was just great, and without your help, we couldn't have gotten to this point. So we thank you very much for that. So we have a motion and we have a second, and if there's no other discussion, I say we take a vote. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Chair Wiscombe, before we move on to the next item, I would just like to make a couple of comments. I've had the pleasure of working with the Youth Council, and I'm now with the department 13 years, and a lot of different youth have rotated on and off of the Youth Council. And so this proposal is really an opportunity to build on that success. And I want to also acknowledge Susan's role in bringing this forward. This has been a priority for Susan. She has talked about it over the years. She has identified that for the Youth Council to continue to be sustained, that there was a need to fold it into the city's advisory committee structure as authored by City Council. So I really want to thank her for the time and energy that she has dedicated both to the Youth Council and to this effort. So thank you very much. We will look forward to taking this recommendation to City Council.
Thank you, Ms. Rapp. Oh, heck, let's give Susan a hand. Yeah. Okay. So we are moving on to agenda item number 7, Plaza de la Guerra Infrastructure Improvement Project. And Ms. Rapp?
All right. This is a concept review, and Jill Zachary will do the lead-in for staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Wiscombe, members of the Commission, we have with us today Liz Limon and Mark Aguilar from the city's redevelopment agency. And Liz will be doing the presentation. They will be answering your questions. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context for our department. As you know, Plaza de la Guerra is a city park, or at least it's used as a city park. It is a community center. We have events there. It's in front of our city hall. It is near and dear to many people's hearts, and it's a place that lots of people have many different associations. So as you can imagine, as they will go through their presentation, there's been lots of back and forth and discussion. This is a concept review. I would like you to know that Parks and Recreation staff are involved in working with the redevelopment agency on this project. We participate in staff meetings. We're here today. We've been before the Commission and the Street Tree Advisory Committee before. It's not just myself, but it's Santos Escobar and Tim Downey. So if there are tree-related questions, they are both here to be able to answer that, or maintenance-related questions, they are here to answer that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Liz for the presentation.
Thanks. How do I? Excuse me. Good afternoon. I'm Liz Limon. I just need to find my the desktop here. Can you? Too easy. Sorry. I'm used to things being much more complex than that. Good afternoon, Chair Wiscombe and Commission members. I'm Liz Limon with the Community Development Department, and thanks for the introduction, Jill. And we're here today to give the Commission a status report on the Plaza de la Guerra Infrastructure Improvement Project. As you know, this project has been around quite some time, and that the plaza is part of one large parcel that includes City Hall, the plaza, as well as Stork Placita and the City Hall parking lot, just for context. The project has been, discussions about Plaza de la Guerra improvements has been around a long time, started in about 2004. And initially there was a much larger conceptual plan presented to this commission and the community in and around 2007. The reaction to the larger plan that included removal of parking and street closure and a lot of other more significant elements was fairly strong, and it went back to council in 2009 with a more simple plan for improvements to Plaza de la Guerra. And that's the current iteration is based on the council direction that we got in 2009, where the city council really said, look to make improvements at Plaza de la Guerra, keep it the same, but make it better. And so that's been our direction since 2009. And today I just want to go over some of the key elements of the current conceptual plan. And at the end of my presentation, I'll give you next steps in the approval process. To begin with, I just wanted to go over quickly some of the existing conditions in the plaza that we're trying to address with the improvement project. I'm sure you're very familiar with it, but this slide shows the condition of the roadway surface going around the plaza lawn area. It's very much in need of attention, cracked, and is a patchwork of asphalt and concrete. Also, the sidewalks along the western edge behind the restaurants that front on State Street is very narrow. It's only about 4.5 feet, and you see on the left is a example of the conditions there. The plaza lawn area itself has lots of different utility irrigation panels and other things that have just kind of evolved haphazardly over time. This is another shot of the narrow sidewalk along the back of the businesses and the existing roadway surface condition. So the direction from council has been to keep the plaza the same as it functions for pretty much day-to-day users and the surrounding businesses and the events. We have many people we're trying to keep involved and consider as we look at this project. So some of the proposed improvements that we believe really address the direction to keep it the same is to replace the sidewalks and the roadway surface with a concrete with a historic scoring pattern. This example here is down from East Cabrillo Boulevard, but we'd like to see the sidewalks and the roadway surface done with a nice concrete treatment such as that. Another very important component is to move the electrical panel that's sitting out diagonally in the middle of the lawn area. We've had some very good discussions with city facilities and Southern California Edison about being able to move that panel and locate it back behind City Hall near the annex area there. So we're working with Edison to draw up some plans for that. And we feel that would be a major accomplishment to remove that panel from the lawn area. Along with that, we are proposing to underground all the utilities. This is an example during special events of the types of connections that are made and the conditions that exist. Our proposal is to line the entire interior lawn area with underground utilities that would include gas, water, sewer, and electricity. And we believe that would be helpful in having the design more simple in the area and very helpful for the special events. We also are proposing to replace the current not city standard receptacles in the lower right with the city standard receptacles in the plaza area. We'd also are proposing to install a new crosswalk at the across De La Guerra Street from Casa de la Guerra near to where the U Road entrance is. On the top right is the existing walk across De La Guerra Street at City Hall, we'd like to do that same type of crosswalk on the other side. And also, we are looking to improve the storm drainage system in the plaza. This slide shows the condition of the road and the drain there at the bottom in front of the News Press building. We also wanted to show the Commission some of the concepts that we're looking at to what we feel would make the plaza function even better for day-to-day users and for special events. We are currently proposing to lower the lawn area and remove the interior curb here so that the lawn area would be flush with the roadway surface. I have another example here of what it would look like. This is just an illustrative drawing. You may recall the original 2009 conceptual plans actually looked to removing both the outside curb and the inside curb to have one completely flush plaza area from side to side. And the input that we heard from various city departments through the PRT review and the development application review team process, as well as some of our technical studies, was that really was created too much, too busy of a project, because wherever the curb is removed, we need to include ADA truncated domes and some removable bollards, which I'll show you more later. And so the original plan was to have two sets of this this condition around. And so some of the input we heard was that might be too busy. And so our landscape architect, who cannot be here today, Doug Campbell of Campbell & Campbell, took that information and came back and he said, okay, well, how about if we kept the outside curb where people park along the street, and instead of raising the road, lower the lawn area, so we would just lose the interior lawn. It would still get that larger, flat, consistent plaza area, but the exterior sidewalks would still have a curb and be raised slightly. So again, this is just an example of the type of bollard we'd be looking at. We're, based on input from the plaza user groups and park staff, we haven't landed on exactly what type of bollard, whether it would be removable or whether it would sink into the ground, but this is an example of what one might look like. So as part of the idea of lowering the lawn area, we also are looking, the consultant is proposing to replace about 6,500 square feet of the lawn area with permeable pavers. This is a little hard to see, but this is the example. Here's De La Guerra Street. And this pattern here would be permeable pavers, as well as down in front of the News Press, part of that area. They were proposing this in response to what we heard from some of the user groups about setting up the stage at that end of the plaza for Cinco de Mayo and Fiesta, and that the curb there it makes a very awkward and kind of pinch situation. So with the lawn area becoming flush with the roadway surface and without the curb there, it provided a much better situation for staging events down at that end. We are also responding to some information we got from Tim Downey early on. He did a study of the trees out there. Initially, the project was proposing to relocate all the existing palm trees in the project, but his study determined that the condition of the trees and the age of the trees, that it was unlikely that many of them would survive relocation. So we're now proposing to replace all the existing palm trees with new palm trees. And they would be based on some input from the Street Tree Advisory Committee. We're proposing to cluster them in sort of sets of 3. Here, I lost my, yeah. And these would be the same palms that are out there now. They go from 13. We're proposing to go up to 24 trees. The Street Tree Advisory Committee was interested in clustering them to give a little bit of shade from the palm trees. And then we're also proposing to, we're going to try to preserve the existing tall, is that the queen palm? Queen palm there, and replace it with, or keep that one that's there now. This one died about 5 years ago, and we will replace it with a queen palm and try to have one on hand when this one reaches the end of its lifespan. Those two queen palms there were planted to commemorate where the old City Hall was. That was up until 1924. It was located in the plaza area. So it's important that those two be there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are proposing along the western edge to widen the sidewalk from its 4 feet now to about 9 feet wide is the current proposal along the length of the U Road on the entry side. And the current plan also proposes to relocate the flagpoles and remove the agapanthus at the De La Guerra Street frontage in order to open up the park to De La Guerra Street as you walk or drive or ride by, and also to open it up to the Casa de la Guerra to make a stronger connection there. And again, this is just that illustrative plan showing the relocated poles and how this would now be open to the sidewalk, the roadway, and Casa de la Guerra. The current recommendation as far as the on-street parking in the project area is to eliminate 5 curbside parking spaces in the U Road Plaza area. 3 would be where Stork Placita comes into the Plaza de la Guerra in order to create a stronger visual connection and a better flow from State Street into the plaza for pedestrians. That's the current proposal. And then also to remove 2 of the interior spaces where the road exits in front of City Hall and next to the historic pepper tree because it creates a narrow point, and for emergency purposes it would be better to remove those last 2. Let's see. Where am I now? Oh, a little bit closer look at the parking and circulation changes. We were, a couple weeks ago, made a presentation to the Downtown Parking Committee to talk about the on-street parking in the area, what types of parking designations are needed. And this slide is a little hard to see, but I believe you got it in your staff report, shows the distribution of on-street parking spaces for the general public, the green 75-minute, and the yellow is the commercial loading zone. And I'll touch on this in a little bit, but these here 10 spaces on the interior side of the road are spaces that have been commented on during public hearings recently, and I'll show you a better shot of that, I think. What we're proposing currently, as I showed before, was to remove 3 spaces there at Stork Placida and 2 spaces over here. Let's see, a couple at the Historic Landmarks Commission, and when we provided a status report to the City Council in August, several members of the public and the Planning Commission raised questions about or concerns about these interior spaces that were added kind of mysteriously, people say, many years ago by city staff. And many people feel strongly that the addition of these spaces on the inside road there, inside of the road, really block off the plaza, and that when they weren't there, it was a much more open feeling plaza, and people took breaks there and had lunch, and it just felt like much more open and safe, and that now those spaces really kind of close off the area. So that's under consideration and something that people are interested in talking about. The Downtown Parking Committee and also the Downtown Organization raised some question about the number of commercial loading spaces in the Plaza U Road area and along De La Guerra Street. And it was actually the Downtown Organization that said, do we really need the yellow loading zone in the Plaza U Road area? Do trucks really, there's only a few businesses along here. If there's loading along De La Guerra Street and the loading that they can do off State Street, we probably don't need these yellow spaces on the U Road. And we can capture them out here on De La Guerra Street. The Downtown Parking Committee liked that idea, and it's something that we're looking at. And we're taking all this input into consideration. If we could convert those loading spaces to general parking, there might be more support for eliminating these interior curb areas. There's also been, people said, well, maybe we should keep these 3, but removing these are more important. So we're looking at various configurations of the recommendation for on-street parking, but I just wanted to make you aware of that. And I'll wrap up quickly because we want to hear your comments. We're here to hear from you, not so much from me. This budget, again, this project has been under consideration since 2004, and we have funds, redevelopment agency funds in the 2003 bond measure for $2.4 million. Right now, the total projected cost is about $2.2 million. And let's see, in 2011, recently we've been busy. I think I mentioned a few of them. In August, we were at the Historic Landmarks Commission for concept review. At that time, they also accepted the Phase 1 archaeological resources report that was done. I guess I should mention that we did do some field research and found some Spanish-era deposits near the Agapanthus out there, and so we have some archaeological challenges before us. We also had a historic structures report done, and both those reports were accepted by the Historic Landmarks Commission. The Planning Commission held an environmental scoping hearing in September because we will be doing an EIR based on the archaeology issues that we have, and they'll also be looking at transportation, circulation, and historic resources as well. I mentioned earlier we were at the Downtown Parking Committee a couple weeks ago, and then we're here before you today. The project approval process for the project is still a ways out. We're still at the early concept stage. The EIR preparation and the hearings and noticing involved with that takes a good 9 to 12 months, so we don't think the EIR will be certified until the fall of next year, and that will be an action that the Planning Commission will be asked to take to certify the EIR. Then we would be back to the Parks and Recreation Commission, who have the Parks and Recreation Zone Approval Authority. So we would be back to you to ask for your approval of the project at whatever iteration it is at that point in time. Then the Historic Landmarks Commission also has the final design review approval authority, and so we see that happening probably in early 2013. And all of these various decisions by the boards and commissions are all appealable to City Council if that's necessary, which would add some time also. So we think the earliest that and the City Council also would be the authority to approve the construction contract. But we see the earliest that happening as in 2013 or so. So it's been a long time getting here, and we still have a long time before us, but we hadn't been to the Parks and Recreation Commission since 2007, and we thought it was important to come give you a status report and hear your thoughts on the current iteration of the project. So that concludes my presentation. We're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Limon. I appreciate it. It was a great report. We have a speaker slip, so we're going to take some public comment. But before that, does anyone on the commission have a question before we actually take public comment and then open it up to just? No.
I would just want to touch a little bit, if you could comment on the pepper tree and there was mention of it in the report, and the protection of the historic pepper tree.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Longstreet. Tim Downey's been involved in meetings with us and the landscape architect, and he was the one who we all along have been trying to design the project to be as protective of that tree as possible. And together they came up with an idea of adding some additional protection for the tree with the project that would include like a chain, bollards and chains around it so that people can't be walking in the root zone. And certainly extra precaution will be taken during construction for any changes to the street around the tree.
And I know we went through something with the Morton Bay Fig about permeable pavings on the street side of that. Is that all ringing a bell with anybody back then? I mean, is there that kind of activity that can happen that can help that tree?
Well, it's interesting you should mention permeable pavers, because we've talked about it a lot in the project. We are incorporating some in the lawn area, but people have also suggested that maybe as the technology is changing, there might be even a roadway surface that would be acceptable to the HLC and the Parks Commission that could incorporate permeable pavers. We haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen one that would be acceptable, but it seems to be advancing quite quickly. So it's something we want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I know there was stuff, maybe we should look back to the Morton Bay Fig report and see what we did back then.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Casebeer?
Yeah, I just wanted to review the relocation of the flagpoles. Any ideas where they might be relocated to?
Sorry. Thank you, Commissioner Casebeer. The current proposal is to relocate the flagpoles over on the City Hall side of the plaza, but still on the lawn side of the roadway.
Okay.
So right here is not the best example, but these are the flagpoles shown right there. But that's still conceptual at this point, but that is the architect's recommendation, is to just sort of swing them around to be on the City Hall side. He feels that that's important to be near City Hall with the flagpoles, but he also says that from De La Guerra Street and State Street, they'd still be visible, and they're very beautiful when they're lit up at night.
And there's also a bronze plaque.
Yes, there is I don't think I have a photo of it, but yes, there's a stone monument plaque that we would propose to relocate over to City Hall where the bike racks are, and there's currently another stone plaque there as well. I think donated from the Armenian Society or something. So it would be over in that area somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will, Mr. DeForest, are you here to speak on this item? I gather you are. Yes, well, welcome. So we'll open it up for public comment.
Good afternoon. I'm Kellum DeForest, and as you probably know, I'm very interested in historical preservation here in the Santa Barbara area. And it would be interesting, there has been a great deal of discussion among preservationists about the retaining of the existing curb and lawn. The curb, as you probably know, if you read any of the history, dates back possibly even before, because the curb lining the semicircular driveway might have, though we don't quite have evidence for it, might have been part of the old original city, or not original City Hall, but the second City Hall that occupied the center of the plaza. It certainly shows in photographs, and it definitely was there in 1923 when the building that we're now in was built and opened. So that is a problem. And another problem, although not strictly a historic one, is the expense. And although I haven't seen the exact figures, but people have been saying that the big expense is removing all the concrete and replacing it, and the more concrete that gets taken up, the more expensive it gets. And so there has been those that wonder what, with that first slide, first section of the improvements, which everybody, I'm sure, would want, like getting rid of the electrical and consolidating the electrical and service outlets. All of those are great, but you get really, people get upset when, like, over issues of moving the flagpoles and what good will the bollards do, and there are a number of questions there. So please consider the history of this space, because it is probably next to the De La Guerra house itself and the mission and the Presidio, which is being rebuilt, so that isn't that old. Historically, a very important historic site in Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeForest. Okay, we also have Mr. Richard Ricard. Sorry. Welcome. Thought I'd get that wrong. It looked too easy.
I get Richard all the time. Or Rickard, yeah. My name's Dennis Ricard. I'm a longtime resident. My family owns the Urania Adobe on the corner. This will directly impact us. I'm in favor of the first part of this, and I'm completely opposed to the second part of this. And I've been talking against this for over 5 years, okay? This was supposed to be fix-its, okay? And just a few of the things that they talked about: pave the street, fix the sidewalk, get rid of the electrical. I can see that because, like this gentleman just said, it's an historical location. Whether or not it's an historical landmark in actuality, it is in reality, it is. Okay. And I know that they have these funds, and they seem to think they need to spend them, but I honestly believe that the end game, I think, potentially is to close it all to parking. I think that'd be we'd think, as business owners, be a terrible idea. I think I only need you to take to the benches issue on State Street. You create an environment where there's nothing there. There's no cars coming and going. They want to hang out there. Okay, our tenants are really concerned about it. I can see downtown organization getting along, but the interesting part is the last time this came around, 80 businesses signed a petition not to do that one. Okay, they come back with this quote adjustment, but I think what we need here is simply pave the street, fix the sidewalk, and get rid of the electrical. But the CURB mentioned the Historical Landmarks Committee that I attended that meeting, even though it says it approved it. It was 4-3. And it was very divisive in that meeting. I saw that. I wasn't even going to speak. And I said, well, I'm going to speak. These people see what I see. And they all said, the CURB, I mean, that's going to, in the bollards, we have a individual who has a art business in our building. I asked him, you ever seen in a history? Because my grandmother was born in that building. I mean, so over 100 years we've owned the building. Okay, there's no bollards in this area. We don't recall it. Family doesn't recall it. The artist doesn't. His business, he's never seen it. So, the Historic Landmarks was concerned about how changing the historic character of this area, and I don't think there's any doubt. But what you've just seen will do that, and I think that should be considered here. So, I really hope that you'll think long and hard about this. I don't think that these funds are specifically targeted for this. I think they are redevelopment funds that can be spent on this, okay? But we can also consider a police station that is far more important for this city than to spend $2.2 million on doing this to De La Guerra Plaza, okay? I mean, I've watched this, and the people in the city keep working and working and working, and if you show it to the general public, I think they'll just I don't think they'll like it. And I would hopefully, in your capacity, if you would please, this rendering, get it on the front page of some local papers before the election. I think the city council now should say, well, what do you think of this? I think they're going to spend this kind of money in these economic times to do something like this in well-meaning. It's all well-meaning, but this is an historical landmark you're about to touch. And the thought of backhoes coming to it and digging it up, and of course I'm emotional because my great-great-grandfather is named for this, Jose De La Guerra. So it means something to us, and our family's always been preservationists, just like this gentleman talks about, and so forth. So I think I would hope and implore you to really think about the historical character of this area before you act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Burns?
I have a question for Mr. Ricard. Both of us have been active with Old Spanish Days. I haven't been active for the last 10 or 12 years. Mm-hmm. I remember running electrical cables down to the newspress basement for the what do you call the stage. Is that still done, or how's it handled
Well,
now?
I don't handle the Mikados. My area of supervision was the parade. That's what I dealt with. But no, yeah, they electrically, there's need to fix that. No question about that. But as far as I do believe they do something like that, but again, I don't handle that, so I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you both for your comments. I'll close public comment, and we'll open it up to the commission for discussion. Yes, Ms.
I'll
Longstreet.
start.
Sure.
I agree that this is an important historic site, and I also think that we need to maintain our sites, and this is a site in definite need of being maintained. We've ignored it. Things have happened in there over the years that need to be rectified, and there needs to be some change. And one of the things that needs to be rectified is currently it looks like a parking lot with a lawn, in my opinion. And I don't believe historically it looked like a parking lot with a lawn. So I would like to see some of the lessening of parking in the area. I am especially concerned about the interior spaces, the lawn side spaces. I think they're pretty unsafe. They close off the park. They make it a place you don't want to be. The outside parking is a different situation to me, but it's that interior, and I think by losing the interior parking, that whole other side becomes a little bit safer and more open for the other vehicles. We may also gain a little bit of space for our pepper tree there. So that is my first concern. And I work downtown and walk through there several times a week, so I do use it. I would like it to see it become an area again where we have events, not just old Spanish days, but I remember when they used to have afternoon concerts and lunchtime concerts there, and people would go down with their kids. So, we need to have a place that functions and brings the good activities back into it and take it away from what it is like today. I can't speak to the historic nature of the curb. It appeals to me to have it be a level facility that works for Old Spanish, the big events that we have there. Currently, you could, hurt yourself badly trying to get in and out of there when you have a lot of people and it's very crowded. Really think it's important to upgrade all the utilities. That part of it is without question necessary to make it useful to all the residents for the events that we all love to go to there. I think as far as the palm trees and the clustering, the replanting needs to happen, and I have to trust the arborists on that one. I kind of wonder about the queen palms and want to make sure that what we put in there matches. That we don't end up staggering, so we always have one short one and one tall one, but that we can maybe start off and make that look like it represents the building in the way it was supposed to be. The paving within the plaza, the new paving proposals, they're a little shocking to me right now. I'm not quite comfortable with that yet, but I know this is in concept. I'm used to seeing that being a complete lawn area, but it may really serve us well to have that space. It may make it more useful to the community. So as jarring as it is, I think it's something that has to be developed over time to see where it comes to. And I would hope to see it. We didn't discuss much about lighting, but to make it appropriately lit at night with, is all important. But the main thing for me is to draw back down there the uses we want to see, to make it a space that's welcoming, to go have your lunch, to, pick up a salad somewhere and go down and sit there. So that's comments.
Thank you. Mr. Burns?
Thank you. Couple of comments in no particular order. I like the thought of taking out the 3 parking spaces so you have a better view from Stork Placida. Over the years, it just doesn't. Stork Placida, nobody seems to know where that goes, and this would actually would help the access there. I also like the thought of a wider sidewalk on the side where we actually could get some maybe some restaurants having some outdoor patrons, and I'm thinking if we do that, there's a good chance we would probably have some more activity in the plaza, and that might help us get rid of some of the what's the word I want to use, undesirable people that sometimes show up there. When I was active with Old Spanish Days, I remember one year where I was involved with taking electrical cables for the stage down to the basement of the News Press building. I don't know if that's still done. It is still done, okay. Just as a question to staff, would that still be done with the new electrical box?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Burns, no, the idea is to remove the electrical box and improve it such that the events would no longer have to take power from the News Press.
Okay, good. That makes sense because when they ran the cords, they'd also have to run some 2x4s around it, so nobody would get shocked, electrocuted. When I was active then, the light standards, one of them broke, and that probably was 15 years ago. So I mean, there's things always need to be changed to make this better or maintained. Talking on the curb, I understand the reasoning that it may be historic, and we're not sure if we want to get rid of the curb. Yet, right now at Mackenzie Park, we're changing the parking with some pavers so we can get better drainage. And I think that if we were to take out the curb, there's a better chance that it would drain into the grass area, and that might be a good reason to do that. I mean, that's something we're trying to do. The one in the upper part of that picture, we've got, which I believe is the city employee parking lot. And if we're going to lose some parking, we might look at taking some of that parking, maybe having some of the city employees park, and I believe that's lot 10. When I worked downtown, I parked in lot 10 and walked further than these employees would walk, and maybe make some of that parking 90-minute parking or 15-minute parking. I don't know if that's ever been discussed. I think that might be something that would make sense. So generally, I'm in favor of the general direction on it. I don't have any thoughts one way or the other how much lawn we would lose if we're going to make it with the concrete in the center. I don't have an opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Casebeer.
I just have one quick question. We've been discussing the curbing around the interior. Does anybody know if this is concrete or is this the hand-cut sandstone curbing that's prevalent around town?
Commissioner.
Okay.
Concrete and it's not the historic stone.
All righty. Thank you.
Mr. Chernikowski?
Yeah, I had a question about the curb also. Other than opening it up more, is there any other additional functionality that we would gain by taking the curb out?
Yes, Ms. Brapp wants to say something, but I would like to touch also on what the other commissioner mentioned, which is the storm drain issue. And through the planning review processes, we did work with the Creeks Division, and we actually did percolation tests and a whole hydrology study to see whether the revised project, which includes a drainage swale down the middle, would meet the stormwater requirements. And we did quite an extensive study of that and found that the project, with lowering the lawn, we would meet the stormwater capture requirements for the 100-year and the 24-hour events. So that is an important component of the lowering the lawn area and removing that interior curb. It does help with the stormwater capture, because there is just the one existing storm drain down at the bottom. So that is a benefit of removing the curb.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Trentacosti, from a staff perspective, I think for us, as we've looked at the upgrades or the renovation of the De La Guerra Plaza, aside from making the area a more pleasant area for the casual park visitor, it's important for us to consider what those changes or improvements would do for the events that are held there. And I did want to just talk briefly about the events that are held at De La Guerra Plaza. Currently, they're restricted to twice a month, and generally they are larger scale events. So like Cinco de Mayo and Fiesta. And so when you have a large number of people in a small space like that, particularly for those kinds of events where you have vendor booths set up around the perimeter, I think for us, part of leveling the turf to the street surface is to eliminate or minimize the risk of people in a crowded area stepping off and getting injured. And so it just reduces that risk. And so that's a factor for us, knowing that that is how De La Guerra Plaza is used by the community. And we are not necessarily advocating for increased use above what historically we have done there. Although I think there's been some community interest in small events that are less formal. We do have to be careful about events in De La Guerra Plaza. We work pretty closely with the downtown organization to balance both their needs as business people with the community needs for large special events. But the curb is an issue for us as a way of improving the facility for those types of events.
And the other question I had is, I did notice when the project was being defined that the parking lot is part of the overall parcel, and it did look like there might be some room for making that more efficient use as well. I don't know if there's any plans for that. But.
Madam Chair and Commissioner, I just wanted to clarify the zoning. While this is one singular parcel, as noted earlier in the presentation, which includes City Hall parking lot, the plaza, and Store Placida, it's split zoned. So the part that is actually zoned PR is the existing lawn area to the very edge. So the actual parking is outside of the PR zone, just for clarification.
And then the other thing is, I couldn't tell from the drawings. There was a proposed and current and proposed, and I couldn't tell. Is there any change to the bicycle parking area?
Commissioner Trentacosti, no. The bicycle parking would stay where it is. We might look at the efficiency of the posts there and seeing if we can add some additional bike parking, but the parking there is where the bike parking will be. There is a floating metal rack down here that's not even bolted to the ground. Mm-hmm. That's not likely to be included. There's not room down there for the bike parking there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I have some comments, again, in no particular order. I love the widened sidewalk. I think that's really great, and it maybe addresses some some of the concerns about, going down at lunchtime, and if it's a more active space, I think it becomes better use space and a safer space, and probably discourages some undesirable activity. I love the removal of the agapanthus. I think that's part of the plan. That is, go for it. Do it now if you can. No, I'm just kidding. I really don't think that belongs on that site. I like the clustering of the new trees. I'd probably be in favor of more shade, but I understand the reasons not to do it that way. So I think the clustering at least satisfies the need for more shade in the space. I like the concept plan from its openness standpoint. I think that's, standing in there and from any direction, it's just got to remain open. And I thought that Commissioner Burns' comment was excellent in terms of perhaps maybe eliminating some more spaces to create more openness and being able to see through the plaza and moving some city parking to Lot 10. I thought that was a great comment and should probably be looked at. And I agree with Commissioner Longstreet. I'm not really comfortable with the pavement yet, and I'm not sure what the purpose of it is. I understand the stage end, but I don't understand. Maybe is there a rationale to why that was added? The lawn was removed there, and that was.
Chair Wiscombe, again, I wish our landscape architect could be here, but I believe he was trying to facilitate the pedestrian. He was addressing the current pedestrian activity crossing from City Hall over to the other side of the plaza, to De La Guerra Street and out to State Street. Okay. And incorporating permeable pavers here, thought that would kind of formalize that path of travel that currently exists.
Okay. And is there in the lawn area there now, is there a worn path usually if there's a worn path, that signifies a need for excuse me, an improvement, but is the area there worn now with a definite?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, the path of travel and all of that has been discussed by staff in the past. We've seen many reiterations of this plan. And actually, there is a lot of pedestrian travel in that area. Most people avoid the grass because it's usually wet. And so it is, and I speak as somebody who travels across that area pretty frequently. And so we really do believe that there would be more traversing across the plaza area if, in fact, there was hardscape that people could walk on. Right now, people walk around the plaza.
Okay, that's a good answer. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. And my only other comment, I guess, is in relation to the curb. I understand, I think, the history of the curb, but we also, I think, have to consider how the plaza is used. And we do use it for large events. And I think also we have to consider the storm drainage, and we have to consider the openness. And I think that eliminating the curb is really expands the breadth of the plaza and makes it feel more open, and and visually it will be more open. So I would be in favor of, for those reasons, of taking the curb out on the internal part. Yes.
I did have one more comment about the curb, and that's the ADA accessibility. Considering the events we have there, does this now open this up for a whole nother group of people that currently wouldn't be able to get up that curb and attend Old Spanish Days or the Mercado.
Yes, Commissioner Longstreet, absolutely. Yeah.
I think we have to seriously consider the ADA considerations.
Well, and the other thing is with the pavement that BB and I weren't sure about, for lack of better word, that's ADA too, because normally turf isn't, and so that will be a good thing from that standpoint. So that's all I have. Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay, thank you very much to both of you. That was a great presentation, and we'll be looking forward to where it is next time we see it.
Yes, thank you very much. Great comments.
Okay, we are on to agenda item number 8, which is Tree Preservation Ordinance Enforcement Summary Report. Mr. Downey, welcome back.
Long time no see. Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, wanted to share with you our commitment and process for enforcing upon municipal code violations related to tree preservation. The tree preservation policies are outlined in Santa Barbara Municipal Code Title 15. Chapter 1520, tree planting and maintenance regulates city-owned trees, historic and specimen trees. Chapter 15.24, the tree preservation ordinance regulates trees on private property within certain areas and trees that are in parking lots on landscape plans. Forestry staff enforces for city-owned trees and trees in the regulated front setback for the majority of parcels in Santa Barbara. Community Development Department enforces on tree violations in parking lots, historic properties, and on approved plans. And the reason for that is those types of locations are related to approvals by community development boards and commissions. The enforcement action and response process is quite involved. When we get a report of a violation, we conduct a site investigation, photograph to document. Then the case is assigned and entered into our system that we record the enforcement cases. Once that happens, first contact is made with the property owner, and that comes in a form of a letter to ask them to contact us regarding the enforcement case, and set a meeting date to meet and discuss the violation. That meeting is held with the property owner, and during that meeting, documents are provided and education is provided about the code. There's mitigation determined based on the individual cases, what's appropriate for the case, and once that mitigation is completed, the case is closed. As far as types of violations, first offensive violations are typically excessive prunings. The vast majority are pruning violations. But there are some removal of regulated trees and unpermitted work on city-owned trees as well. This table illustrates the types of cases that we've had since 2009. And I want to say that the previous slides talked about enforcement in general. The remainder of these slides only talk about the forestry portion of enforcement. It does not include community development's actions. This table shows that the As an example, in 2009, there were 11 violations of the Title 15 or Chapter 1520 of the Municipal Code, 34 of 1524, and 3 violations of both of those. These are enforcement case numbers, not tree numbers. So these are, one case can involve more than one tree. So just to be clear, these numbers illustrate the number of cases for each year. The mitigation that we require is based again on the type of violation and the discussion that's held at the meeting with the property owner. All mitigation includes a submittal of a letter. They must submit a letter as part, that's the minimum. They have to submit a letter that says that we met, and when we met, that I gave them several documents to review that relate to their case and help educate them about why it's important not to violate the ordinance, including why it's bad for the trees. And the municipal codes in their entirety are provided. That letter needs to acknowledge that they've received those materials, a commitment that they're not going to violate tree preservation in the future, and gives us contact information for other people involved in the case, which then becomes a separate case for those people. The previous table that said the number of cases was the initial cases only. Additional mitigation, depending on the case, may require replacement trees, may require a tree restoration plan if the tree can be restored to its natural state. That would have to be prepared by an independent certified arborist, potentially fines, applications for removal and replacement when the tree couldn't be saved and they need to then follow through with the process we did earlier this evening. All of these items are at the expense of the property owner, the initial case. So although we don't find in every case, there's always some effort that that person has to go through to mitigate the case. Now, each one of these cases takes sufficient staff time to process the cases. That includes all the data input, the record keeping, sending letters, having the meetings with property owners. All those items are previously discussed. For a simple case, well, those cases range from about 6 staff hours to 20 staff hours each. For a simple case, 6 to 7 hours is typical. For complex case that require more mitigation, and they require more man hours to process those cases. One recent case involved 2 letters to the property owner, 6 site inspections, 2 trees they had to purchase and plant, and 15 other various correspondences that all had to be logged in the data system. Just this is to give you an idea of the staff resources it takes to process these cases. Since 2009, we've opened 88 cases. We have since closed 59 cases. There's 29 pending. 5 of those are from 2009. 11 of those are from 2010, and 13 of those are from 2011. Many of these pending cases have already been sent letters to begin the process to mitigate the violations. One of my responsibilities when I started, I took on these cases, and it's a lot for one person to do. So in order to eliminate the backlog of cases, we've divided the cases amongst three forestry staff. Myself, the city tree inspector, supervisor, and forestry technician. We've provided some training for them, and they are processing cases on their own, lightening my load, and we're getting that backlog handled. We anticipate that the backlog will be eliminated by March of 2012, and we will only handle cases as they come in and much more current. And with that, I'll offer you an opportunity to ask questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. We will open it up to the commission. Does anyone have? Yes, Mr. Burns.
This may be simple. The enforcement is either done by you with forestry or it's done with the community development. Or who handles it for community development, or how does that work?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Burns, there are staff assigned to each review body in community development. Wherever the jurisdiction lies for the tree, that staff person handles the enforcement case for that tree. As an example, if it falls within HLC jurisdiction, the staff member that supports HLC handles the enforcement case.
And I'm assuming they would use your expertise on the tree. I mean, I guess that's what where does your expertise fit in if it's, see where I'm coming from?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, Commissioner Burns, I work closely with community development. I am the city's expert on trees. When a case is in their jurisdiction, they certainly utilize my expertise to determine whether or not the work that was done constitutes the violation of 1524. I've worked closely with them to share our processes for handling cases, and they've adopted some of those, and they're working. They continue to work with me on those cases.
Yes, Ms. Longstreet.
Your chart of the violations and the types, it looks like the education that was done has made a difference, because there's a sharp decline I see in the number of violations. I'm hoping that's education and not just not reporting.
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Longstreet, one of the things that I do when I process a case is to ask for the name of the contact person who is responsible for the work. Frequently, that's a contractor. I hold a complete separate meeting with that person as well to educate them on the city's rules so that they have an understanding of what they are, and they won't inadvertently go on to another property and cause some issues for that other property owner to have violations. So yes, education is a key component of our strategies, and we're not stopping at the property owners. We're going to the contractors and telling them to.
Chair Wiscombe, if I could just add, for the last 3 years now, I think 2009, 10, almost the end of this year, tree ordinance violations, actually it reaches back into 2008, have been a topic of community discussion. So you've had previous presentations where we've gone over the amendments to the municipal code, the tree preservation ordinance, council's adoption of a fairly steep fine schedule specific to tree violations. And through that process, I think tree contractors and members of the public have become more informed. But I'd also like to point out that we've conducted 3 workshops where we've reached out to tree companies, landscape companies, property management firms, where we're actively trying to make sure people understand and know what the rules are to preclude future violations, because we'd really rather not be spending our time on this kind of thing. It's really to encourage people to comply rather than to spend time penalizing them. So that's been successful, and those are workshops that Tim Downey conducts, and I imagine we'll have more in 2012 as part of our commitment to the City Council. We've also updated the forestry section of our department's webpage, and there's a lot of really good resources there for individuals. The tree removal application spells out very explicitly. So it's getting out there slowly throughout the community, and we hope to see the numbers continue to go down.
Thank you, Ms. Zachary. Yeah, you know, with the number of violations are down, and I think between the workshops and the community tree planting guide, which has some very valuable information, I've got to believe those things are very effective in terms of educating the public about what you can't do. And I got to commend staff. I mean, it was a big deal to take this on in 2009, and 67% of the cases have been closed by Mr. Downey and staff, and I think it's great, and I'm glad you're finally spreading the wealth a little bit and getting some help to get them closed. So it was an excellent report. Does anyone have anything else? Okay. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Okay. Agenda item number 9 is the FY 2011 annual P3 performance measure reports, which are really in our packet just for information, right? We're not having a...
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, it was not my intent to go over this report in any detail. I just, as you have reviewed the budget in the past, you have noticed that we have performance measures on each program page of the budget. So our performance measures are set to define and explain how we use our resources, and so that we actually have objectives that are set and target numbers to accomplish. So I'm pleased to report that the department has once again had a good number of successful accomplishments, 81% of our objectives, because we have a reputation in the city organization for pushing ourselves and having targets that are a challenge to achieve in most of our programs. And also, many of our performance objectives are our ability to succeed are colored by the economy and people choosing or not choosing to participate in programs, so things beyond our control. So I'm very proud of the department's performance. I do feel that reading through these various program reports, it gives you a sense of what staff have experienced over the past year in a little more detail. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you have, but I did not plan to go through it in detail.
Okay, does anyone have a question? I have a couple, but yes, Mr. Burns?
Well, no, actually, I enjoyed going through them, and as I recall, when I had some questions either last year or year before, I actually went and sent the questions to Jill, because some of them are just little detail questions. But just as my one question is, this was in, why didn't we get it maybe in August, this report in August or September?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioner Burns, it goes to the city administrator, and it's simply a matter of us waiting to get any comments or questions back from him, and then just getting it on the commission agenda. No reason other than that.
I would just say it was at council last week, I believe, or yesterday. And it was an interesting discussion to hear the city administrator say that 81% was quite a good achievement, because he feels that if it was any higher, that the goals were not set high enough. So
That's great. Did you have anything, Charlie? No? Okay. Okay. It's a great report, and it's really worth going through. I was struck by something in the report that shows how proactive the department is, and that was in the golf section. The compost applications, they didn't meet their objective because it was due to labor constraints and also golfer dissatisfaction. And I thought, how interesting. Here's one where, that brings the number down, but for reasons that are viable. If the golfers are dissatisfied with the experience, then I thought that was really neat. And I also thought it was great in the rec department, the cost recovery in fee-based programs was actually higher this year than in FY11 than it was last year, which I thought was really great. Up at 10%, I guess. That's, and my question, I guess, was when I was reading this, recreation, you refer to the Recreation Marketing Committee. That's in business services. And I'm just curious, who is the Recreation Marketing Committee?
Chair Wiscombe and Commissioners, the Recreation Marketing Committee includes Kathy Sullivan, who's our Marketing and Communications Supervisor, key recreation program staff, so the recreation managers and supervisors, and the staff that work most closely with the programs. So we really go quite deep because we want the key people who understand who the patrons are and what the issues are, and also the priorities for promotion. And that makes up our marketing committee. It's an internal staff committee.
Okay. So have you ever thought about adding a commissioner to it or someone that might be marketing oriented, external member?
We could look at that.
I'm just throwing it out.
We've had good
I don't want to
success with
upset the
golf.
apple cart, but
Commissioner Trentacosti, are you busy? No, just kidding.
Did you notice? I just thought it was interesting that, sometimes it's helpful to have inputs from outside sources that, maybe don't see things. So
actually, if we had somebody, particularly somebody with a strong marketing background that was interested in doing that, that would be great. No, I'm not making you feel bad.
Okay. I think that's really all I had, other than, commending the department for great job. That 81% is really, really superior results. So, and I think that concludes our agenda. Our next meeting is Wednesday, November 16th. Our next regular meeting. Yes, Ms.
I
Moser?
would move for adjournment in memory of Michael Magny.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.